Hello, and welcome to the Creative Mojo podcast. This is episode number 43, and Creative Mojo is my podcast all about my love of knitting. Today is Saturday, December 23rd, and it's been about a month since I podcasted last. My apologies for being away for so long. Partially, I was really busy with work and found it difficult to find time, and then, excuse me, as you'll hear, I got yet another cold. This is the second cold I've had this fall, which is really a drag, but it seems to be going around, and everybody here in Calgary has it. I recently read in the newspaper that Calgary was the #1 capital times 4, I think, for colds this season in all of Canada, and I can bear witness to that. Everyone I know has had it, and some people have had it twice, like me, and my husband had it twice, and my sister has it now, and my mother just had it, and anyway, I was sick again about 2 weeks ago, and it was all kind of bronchial, and I was sort of losing my voice and coughing a lot and sniffling and sneezing, and just didn't think that would be particularly lovely for a podcast, so I didn't podcast. I haven't podcasted since late November, between, as I said, work and a cold. But I'm here today, and I want to give a warm welcome to all my returning viewers, assuming I have any that have stuck with me from such a long break, and to any new viewers who might be joining me for the first time. Welcome, and I hope you'll enjoy what you see, and come back and watch again, and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and the little subscribe button down below here, and joining our Ravelry group, which is the Creative Mojo. It's Creative Mojo on Ravelry. You can search it under the groups tab, and we sometimes do knit-alongs and giveaways and that kind of stuff there. Anyway, as I said, it's December 23rd, so it's just before Christmas, and I really did want to get this in before Christmas and wish you all happy holidays, and share a little bit of what I've been working on over the last month. When I last podcast, I was talking about doing some last-minute attempts at Christmas knitting. I left it very late. I usually start my Christmas knitting earlier in the year, like late summer, early fall, and I didn't this year, but lucky for me, I had a lot of half-finished sock projects lying around that I was able to turn into Christmas gifts. And I think I showed you on my last podcast the two I had finished at that point in time. One was this pair of socks, which is it's a decent, accurate kind of depiction of the color there, I think. This is what's the name of this one? The Callaway pattern by Cookie A. These are for my mother. It's a really fun cable and lace pattern, knit out of Hazel Knits Artisan Sock. I don't remember this colorway, and I long ago lost the tag. I started these socks actually in 2013, if you can believe it. I knit one sock in 2013, and the other sock was down to where that progress keeper is, or up to. I had that much of the second sock left. Pulled these out of a long languishing bag and knit them up, and they're ready to give away to my mother for Christmas. And I think I already showed you these, which were the Apple Blossom socks that are by Helen Stewart, that I knit for my sister Carolyn. These are out of some skein yarn in the colorway Intergalactic. So we can get you yes. There's a lovely depiction of the colors with that bright green and pink and gray and cream. They're really pretty. This was a delightful pattern to knit, and I'm going to talk a bit more about Helen Stewart's sock patterns in a minute. So I finished those two, and I managed to finish up 3 more pairs, so I have 5 knitted gifts this year, and then I will have some non-knitted gifts to go with them as well. But I finished these, which were a pattern that this is also a Cookie A pattern. This is the Istanbul sock. I started these earlier this year, I think. Yeah, maybe in the summer. I can't remember exactly when I started them, but earlier this year. And these are for my I was going to say my sister-in-law, but she's actually my sister's sister-in-law. She and her husband join us for Christmas every year, and so these are for her. So her name is Sandra, and I really like how these turned out. These are just beautiful. A beautiful pattern and beautiful yarn. This is Flock Fibers, who are Calgary dyers, and this is in the colorway Antique Shop. can see with those lovely sort of golds and caramels in amongst the beige and brown, and really, really pretty. And there's the pattern on the front, and then there's ribbing on the back. So I finished those, and then this is a pair of just lovely vanilla socks that I knit for my stepmother, Sandy. And these are out of a Sheep Paints yarn. It's a Falky Feet is the name of the base. It's a Falkland wool. This yarn isn't available anymore. I think she stopped dyeing, which is unfortunate because I really like both her bases and her yarns. But I have a couple more skeins of this tucked away in my stash. This is a very nice sock base. It's not quite as soft as some of the merinos, but it still feels really nice, and it feels kind of sturdy, and I think she will really like these. They did an interesting kind of spirally stripe down the leg. I don't remember, unfortunately, the name of the color of this yarn because I bought this yarn several years ago, and I balled it up for, I think it was 2 other projects that I ripped out before I settled on just vanilla socks for these. I think I tried, excuse me, some patterned socks with this yarn twice, and both times it just overwhelmed the pattern, so I decided they just should be vanilla socks. But in all of that, I think I lost the tag, so sorry, no name for that. Something rose is the best I remember. And then the last pair of gift socks that I completed were these socks for my father. This is an opal yarn, I think it's an opal rainforest yarn. I don't remember the color, but I do enjoy opal yarn, especially for men. I've knit my husband quite a few pairs of socks out of opal, and I think my father will really enjoy these. They will be good for keeping his feet warm in the winter. So I got all of that gift knitting done. I actually got most of those socks done in early December. I think these ones I finished about a week ago. They were my last pair. These were actually, I had knit part of the leg, the first part of the leg of one of these a while back, and then they had been languishing. I think I originally had thought they might be for my husband, but I picked them up and decided they'd be good for my dad. So I worked on those, and then I took once the gift knitting was mostly done, other than periodically working on that last pair of socks, I dived into 2 projects that I haven't shown you in quite a while. Last year, I don't remember when I started one of these, but the other one I started right around Christmas last year. I started blankets that I'm intending to give to both my nephews. I had originally, I think, had this idea that I could work on them all year this year, and they could be Christmas presents for this year, and that didn't happen. But I am determined that they are going to be Christmas presents for next year, and I've done a bunch of work on them. And the first one I'm going to show you is my granny stripe crochet blanket. You've seen probably lots of other podcasters knitting on this kind of project, and everybody talks about how addictive it is, and how you just want to crochet away on this and not do anything else. And I definitely have felt that way about this, and I started crocheting on this, like I said, after I got most of those socks done, and for about 2 weeks it's all I worked on. When I would sit and watch television in the evenings, I would crochet away on this. And so I've done a lot of progress since when I showed it to you the last time, many months ago. I was here where that progress keeper is, so I had crocheted that much of it, and then it had sat in a basket for months and months. I picked it up, and in about 2 weeks I did all of that, and really enjoying it. I love the way it's turning out. I love all the colors in it. Basically, I've been doing see if I can find the one I'm working on here. I have this huge basket that has many of the scraps and minis and stuff that I'm using for this, and somewhere in here is there it is. I've been making some magic balls, which is just taking the minis, winding it into a ball, tying the next one on with a magic knot, and doing probably about 70 grams at a time into a ball with a bunch of colors, and then just crocheting until that ball is all gone, and then I start another one. So that's this is the second of those balls that I had that yeah, have turned into this. And I've been doing a mix of leftovers from other projects. It's all fingering weight. Leftovers from other projects and minis that I have. I didn't get an advent calendar this year. Some people did. But I did order a couple of bags of small minis that kind of come in like this size. Just 5 grams, I think. And they get me not quite across a whole row, but that's okay. I don't mind that this changes colors sort of sporadically. In some places, let's see here. So this yellowy orange, which is the leftover from those Callaway socks I showed you for my mother. In some places it was 2 rows, and in some places it was just 1 row, if you can see there. And yeah, this is the best project. It is just really fun. It's fun to see how it works out. It's fun to just mix the colors. I've kind of mostly tried to keep mine in a kind of autumny and jewel toned. I haven't worried too much, and I haven't done too much color management, although trying to keep where I don't get too many light colors in a row and that kind of thing. But lots of greens and oranges and purples and blues and reds and stuff. And yeah, I'm going to keep at this, because this one I want to be able to give. I'll show you the length of it. It's pretty long. It's pretty long there. So I want to make this one is for my younger nephew, Liam, who is almost 12. And I think he will really like that. I thought blankets are great presents, I thought, for both the boys, because my nephews, because they have a trailer, and they go, or a camper, and they go camping a lot in their camper, and I thought it'd be great for them to take camping with them. But I also thought great for like curling up in front of the TV in the winter and watching television and being cozy and warm. And I thought it's something they can keep. It'll be a bit of an heirloom, you know, when they move out, if they move out to go to college and that kind of thing. It will be a great thing to have, a little memory of home. Hopefully a little memory of me. So anyway, there's that. I worked a bunch on that. I'm using a, what is it, 3.5 millimeter crochet hook. It's one of these nice ones with the sort of ergonomic scrunchy handles that are really comfortable, and just puttering away on that. And then I picked up, so I have a second blanket that I've been working on, that I've been working on longer than that one actually, which is a Cozy Memories blanket, you know, a mitered squares blanket. And I worked on this for a bit, and again, then I kind of set it aside and hadn't picked it up in a while. So I picked it back up, and I put a bunch more squares on this. I think the last time I showed it to you, it was about that big. It was, I know, all 4 rows, but it was about that long. So I added all of that to it, all those squares. I try and stop, and you'll see some ends hanging out here, but I try and stop about every 10 to 12 squares and weave those ends in, so that I don't have a million ends. When I get back to it, like, I don't want to have to weave in a million ends all kind of at once. So I do about 10 squares worth of ends at a time. So most of the ends of this are woven in. It's not quite as wide as the crochet blanket. Well, it's not bad. I may add another couple more squares on the end here, make it a tiny bit wider. And I'm doing this one in mostly, as you will see, sort of blues, purples and greens, like blue tones. And so blue, so there's some grayish ones, but and there's some blue green, and there's some bluey purples and stuff, but I'm trying to keep it all kind of in that blue, predominantly kind of blue range, which I think will suit my older nephew Brody. And yeah, I did some figuring on both of these blankets, and I figure if I can add about, for Brody's, for this mitered squares one, if I can add about 10 squares a week on it, I can definitely have it done by next Christmas. And if I actually work on it, 10 squares a week is not undoable at all. And I have, again, I have another whole sort of basket of minis and scraps that are all in those sort of colors to pull from and work on. So yeah, I'm using just the I think there's a mitered, I think it's called Mitered Squares blanket. I can't remember the exact name. It is a pattern. I have it here. It's by Martine Ellis is the pattern that I am using. Do I have the name? Yeah, patchwork. Knitted patchwork recipe it is called. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. My squares are 32 stitches across. So they're smaller than some of the blankets you will see. Some people do larger ones, but I find this a nice, simple little pattern. I don't really need it except that it occasionally reminds me, if I don't work on it for a little bit, it does kind of remind me. I can check in with it and make sure that I'm not forgetting something, but I don't really need it anymore. So I worked a bunch, as you can see, on those two blankets. And I'm just going to stick the needles back in here. And my stitch marker. For this, I'm using 2.75 millimeter, just 2 double points to knit. These are just knit picks. What do they call it? The knit picks, symphonies maybe. Double pointed needles, and that's what I'm using to knit my squares. And a little stitch marker for the middle, and I just poke them through the blanket so I don't lose them or lose the stitch marker. So I'm going to do that. Anyway, so yeah, that was, I kind of, partly when I was sick with the cold and working a lot in the days and coming home and not feeling like doing very much, both blankets were extremely comforting, soothing to work on. And the last work in progress that I have at the moment is my 2017 Christmas socks. I always like to knit myself a pair of Christmas socks in December. I have about, in my large drawer of socks, I did a kind of a head count the other day, and I think there are about 80 pairs of socks now in that drawer. Plus, I have my whole box of socks that have been sitting here that haven't even been worn. But in all of that, I only have about 5 pairs of Christmas socks. This will be my 6th pair. So I have 1 sock completed, and this is how far I am into the 2nd sock. So about 2/3 of the way through the leg of the 2nd sock. The pattern that I'm doing is a free pattern on Ravelry. It's called My Cup of Tea. It's by Robin Lynn. And it's a really nice pattern. I knit it once before in a pair of socks I gifted to my friend Jeanette. And but I never knit this for myself, and it's a really pretty simple little pattern that's just on the front. It's all just stockinette in the back. The yarn is called Vintage Christmas. It's by Yarn Ink. It's just beautiful, this sort of taupe. It's not actually white, it's a sort of taupey kind of color, a bit off-white, with these like lovely speckles and pops of red and green in it. And it's just beautiful. And then for the heel and the toe, I used a little mini of Hedgehog Fibers sock in the Sin colorway. And I thought they looked really beautiful and Christmassy. So I'm hoping actually to finish the 2nd sock of this between today and tomorrow. We'll see how I get on that. Because I still have Christmas presents to wrap and stuff. But they go pretty fast. I just cast the 2nd sock on late last night, so I knit on it while we watched a bit of television. So we'll see if I can get them finished in time to wear them on Christmas Day is what I would like to wear them. But I don't know if that's going to happen or not, because I'm also going to cast on a Christmas Eve cast on, which I'll talk about that in a second. But before I do that, I'm going to show you, I also bought a little tiny bit of new yarn that was my Christmas yarn for this year, which obviously will not become Christmas socks that I can wear this year, but will become Christmas socks that I can wear next year. But I just love this. This is a new to me dyer Bluebird yarn. She's Canadian. This is the lovely tag that the yarn came in. It's the Christmas with the Bennetts is the name of the yarn. So I'm going to show you. And it's a sock set. So this is the main. Isn't that pretty? Like these bright pinks and reds and browns, and there's green in there. It's so pretty. I just love this. And then it came with this lovely mini sort of dark caramelly ginger kind of color. I just think these will be spectacularly beautiful Christmas socks for next year. I don't know what the color of the mini is. And then she also actually included an additional little mini in the gift too, which will probably go into my crochet blanket. Isn't that pretty? So yeah, that's, as I said, that's Bluebird yarn. She's a Canadian dyer. My favorite is Canadian dyers, and I like to sort of shop local. And yeah, that will be my next year's Christmas socks. So then Christmas Eve cast on. If you don't know about Christmas Eve cast on, which probably you do, but if you don't, it's a thing that Danny of the Little Bobbins podcast started last year. No, not last year. What am I saying? Started about 4 years ago. She'd had a tradition for a long time of casting on a pair of socks for herself on Christmas Eve, just to do something sort of to celebrate all of the gifts being done and something for herself. And she talks about it on her latest podcast episode, sort of how she, why she does it. And when she started podcasting, she talked about how she had this tradition, and other people started joining in with her. And it's now become a kind of thing in the knitting community, of people casting on a pair of socks for Christmas Eve for themselves. And I always thought it was a really nice tradition, and I've done it the last, I think, certainly last year. I can't remember if I did it the year before or not. And this year I have, for a couple of reasons, a really special project that I'm going to cast on. This has all to do with other podcasters. I was going to mention a couple of podcasts that newer, certainly they're newer, and they're newer to me as well. Podcasts that I've been watching and really enjoying. Neither of these two podcasts have a lot of episodes yet, but they're both really enjoyable for different reasons. And the first one, which is associated with my Christmas Eve cast on, is a podcast called The Cloud Society. And there's two hosts to it, Kimberly and Anna. And they live in San Francisco, or I think Anna lives in Oakland actually, but they're both I can't think of them. They're both lawyers, and they both work in social services. Lawyers. I can't remember the name of what you call that, but anyway, they're really entertaining, and they podcast together. They're both knitters, and I find them really fun and funny and entertaining and charming, and really enjoy their podcast. Their episodes are all a bit longer, about an hour and a half, and they remind me a lot of a lot of friends I have there, and they feel like the kind of gals that I would love to hang out on a Friday night with and drink a beer and laugh a lot and do some knitting. So if you enjoy that kind of thing, they are very lighthearted and fun and good-natured, occasionally a little foul-mouthed, which does not bother me in the least, but if that's not your cup of tea, then you might not be in for their podcast. But if you kind of love that, gals that just feel like good girlfriends that you could hang out with kind of podcast, I would highly recommend it. Again, it's called The Cloud Society. And I, excuse me, entered into a giveaway they had on their podcast, and I won it, which was super exciting. And the gift I won was this beautiful skein of yarn from a company in San Francisco, a yarn dyer in San Francisco, Earl Grey Fibre Co. And it's going to be hard to see the beauty of this skein, really. I thought when I first opened it, and I didn't have the best light, that it was gray, but when you look at it, you can kind of see there, it's actually the palest sage green and gray, and there's little speckles of black in it as well. And the color is called Dickens, and it's a 75-25 merino nylon. I just love it. I just think it's so beautiful, and it's really soft. And so I'm going to cast this on Christmas Eve with, I'm going to use a little Seawell Fibers Mini, which is a variegated gray. I think those will go really nicely together. And the pattern I'm going to cast on is from another podcast. It's from Jacqueline Salem of the Brooklyn Knit Folk podcast, and it's her second pattern that she's published, sock pattern called Irving Socks. And I'm not going to, it's a paid for pattern, so I don't want to show you a lot of, I don't have a great photo. That's not, you'll have to look at it on the internets, because I often don't print the large cover photo page when I print out I like to print my patterns, but these are really cute socks. I knit her first pair of socks, the Clark socks, and really enjoyed those. And so, yes, on Christmas Eve, I'm going to use this gifted yarn and this lovely pattern from Jacqueline, and that's going to be my Christmas Eve cast on. And the other thing that came in that gift from the Cloud Society was this really, really cute little sock bag made by Kimberly, and I'm going to keep it in this bag. So, yeah, I'm excited about that. I kind of had a moment this morning when I was working on my Christmas socks and went, Christmas Eve cast on. That's tomorrow. It's Christmas Eve tomorrow. Oh my gosh. So that's why I have to wrap some Christmas presents after I finish recording this podcast. So yeah, that's kind of, so the other podcast I was going to tell you about that I've been watching recently and really enjoying is called The Woolen Nest. And she's a podcaster, knitter, lovely gal out of Portland, Oregon. Her podcast is beautiful, very quiet and relaxing, very different from the Cloud Society. Equally enjoyable, both of them. I really like both of them. She does a lot of natural dyeing. She's got a very cute little girl who's about, I think, 2.5 or 3, somewhere in that age range. Yeah, so those are 2 podcasts, Cloud Society and The Woolen Nest, that I would highly recommend to you. And looking at my notes, I've fairly quickly covered everything that I wanted to talk to you about today. I'm not going to go through this in any great detail, but I was going to show you, I have completed the box of socks this year. This is my box. And if I can show you without them all falling out, there are 13 pairs. Take these ones off the top. 13. There's 12 there. And this is the 13th, and then my Christmas socks, which will be finished before the end of December, will be 14. So I will have done 14 socks for the box of socks this year. I have kept them faithfully in this box all year, so none of them have been worn yet. Great to add to my overflowing sock drawer, but it's good because I do have a few of my favorite pairs of socks out of my sock drawer that have started to blow some holes in them because there are some I wear a lot more than others. And there's one pair that I've had for a number of years and I love them, but I've already mended them once and I've noticed that there's now a new hole in the heel, and I was gonna mend them again, and then I went, well, there's like 80 pairs of socks here and a whole box full of ones you haven't worn yet. So I think those socks will actually go bye-bye. The pattern was charade, I think, and I really like that pattern. And so I will have to knit those again for myself. But anyway, yeah, so that's pretty much everything. We're getting ready obviously for Christmas. My husband is out doing his last music gig of the season this afternoon. He plays a regular music gig, a jam actually, a blues jam, at a place here called the Blues Can, and that he does when he's in town every Saturday from 3 to 7, and he's doing that this afternoon, and then he'll be home and we're gonna just have a quiet evening finish wrapping our gifts and that kind of thing, watch a little bit of TV probably, and then tomorrow, yeah, Christmas Eve, we'll just probably hang in the house all day tomorrow. And we usually, for Christmas Eve, Christmas Eve is our time that we have together. So we like to have a quiet evening. We usually like to watch a movie, and we have what we call a living room picnic, which is we spread the coffee table with cheese and sausage and crackers and pickles and chocolates and things like that, and just sort of graze through the evening and watch a movie or two. So I'll probably pick out the movie this afternoon for what we'll watch tomorrow night. And then Christmas Day, of course, that's with my whole family. We usually go to my mother's, and so that's a busy and active day with lots of family and visiting. And then I'm back and I do have Boxing Day off, which is nice. And then but I'm back to work on the 27th, so we're back into rehearsals to get ready for our show, which actually opens on the 10th of January. So back to busy time as soon as Christmas is over. So I'm going to end it here. This is going to be a short episode this week. I do have some fun plans for the new year, and I will try. I don't know exactly when I'm going to podcast. I'm going to try really hard to find a time early into the new year to do another episode. show you kind of what I worked on over the rest of the holidays, and talk about a few plans I have for some activities that we might do in the new year. Maybe actually I will just mention here, I am thinking about having a thread in my group and a kind of a ongoing, very low-key cal for patterned socks. And the reason why I'm thinking, part of what led me to thinking about that is, I mean, as you know, if you watch this podcast, I knit a lot of socks. I knit both vanilla socks and patterned socks. I do enjoy patterned socks. I purchased Helen Stewart of who's the Curious Handmaid on YouTube and Ravelry and Instagram probably too. You may know, she the last 2 years did the Shawl Society, which was a subscription series where you paid in advance and you get 6 shawl patterns released over a period of 6 months, I think, or maybe they're every 2 months all year. I can't remember. Anyway, I did that the last 2 years. This year I didn't do a very good. I think I only knit 1 of those 6 patterns. But I have them forever and I will knit them all. They're beautiful. I will knit them at some point. But this year she decided to mix it up a bit, and she's actually doing a sock society and sock patterns. And I really enjoy knitting her patterns. As I mentioned, this lovely pair was one of hers. And she does with her sock patterns the same she does with her shawls, which is it's a line by line sort of chart, not a chart, but the whole pattern is written out line by line in a kind of graph that you tick off every line. It's a lovely and kind of mindless way to do a pattern sock. Yeah, and I just like how she writes her patterns, and I love her design aesthetic. And so I purchased that this year. I thought that would be fun and encourage me to keep working on some simpler pattern socks. And so I thought what might be fun is to do a pattern sock year-long knit along. And how I thought it might work is anytime all year, starting beginning of January, if you knit and going until the end of December, if you knit a pair of pattern socks, you can put them in the thread of one thread through the whole year. And periodically, every 2 months, I will draw a prize winner from that thread. And so anything you enter in there from January on will always be eligible. If you win the prize, let's say after the first 2 months, so at the end of February, I draw for the first prize round, and I draw you, and you win, then that particular entry would not be eligible again. So if I drew again the next 2 months later and drew that same number, I would just draw again for somebody else to sort of make it fair and spread it out. But any other ones you knit and enter in there. So super simple. The idea being, if you knit a pair of pattern socks, come over to the, you have to be a member of the group, come over to the group as a member, post a picture of those socks in that thread, and periodically I will draw and for some winners and give away some patterns and some yarn. So yeah, if you're into that, if you like to knit socks, and if you like to knit pattern socks or would like to be up for the challenge of knitting a few more pattern socks, and obviously you can enter once, or you could enter as many pair of pattern socks as you can knit in the year. And there's no kind of deadline to it except the end of the year, so there's not a lot of pressure of, oh, I got to get these socks done by February. As long as you started them after January 1st, you can finish them anytime and post them anytime before the end of 2018. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'll open the thread for that and put some information about it. And I hope that you'll knit some pattern socks along with me. As I said, I'll be knitting mostly the ones from Helen's Sock Society this year, but any pair of pattern socks. And by pattern, I just mean anything other than vanilla, really. It can be simple, like, Hermione's Everyday Socks or something, which are a simple pattern, or anything up to, something like this with the much more complex and beautiful pattern. Whatever floats your boat, that's a step beyond vanilla. So yeah, that's everything. I'm going to just end here for today. I'm going to wish you all the happiest of holidays, whether you celebrate Christmas or any other holidays of this time of year, or even if you don't celebrate, but you just enjoy the passing of the seasons and winter solstice and the passing of the year into the new year. I want to wish you a very happy holidays this time of year. Hope you have some lovely time to spend with family and friends, and get through the longest parts of the winter that we're in here. Although if you're in the southern hemisphere, longest parts of the summer, I guess. Anyway, babbling on now. So happy holidays to all of you, and I will see you all again early in 2018.